Mm-hmm.
And then we'll be live. And I
Sounds
don't
good.
think um yeah, we're live. Hey, look at that. We're live on the internet. Hello, everybody. What's up, Dave? You're in the chat. I am here with Kier Adrian Gray. She writes The Recovering Anarchist on Substack. And she was also one of our MCs slash hosts at TUCON over the weekend. And she also gave a presentation that I enjoyed. I've watched it 3 times at this point. I think it's really good. But we did TUCON. It's been a few days since then. I've been reflecting a lot, but I've also been in kind of a funk. And I'm trying to get out of that funk. And I've discovered one of the best ways to get out of that funk is to have something kind of outside myself, to do something productive, something constructive, where there's a positive type of peer pressure. So I'm not just sitting around crying into my pillow. So the podcast episode I released last night, if anyone listened to it, it's not worth it. It's me crying into a pillow, except for the fact when I'm talking about David Power's post about being in time. I actually think that was a good part. But anyway, that's what we're doing here. Say hello to Kier. Kier, thank you for coming on. And as I told you before we went live, I just want to bring you on and I want you to perform for me. I don't have any plans.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love it, Nance. Thanks so much for
Okay.
having me. Happy to be here. Always happy to perform for you. You just let me know when. I'll be there.
Good. So, how have you been? We were in the same city, and in fact, in the same building over the last weekend, and now we're not. So, how are you? How have you been?
I'm good. Yeah. I've settled in back at home. This was like my first time ever kind of getting on a plane to go meet some internet people.
Hmm.
Really did not know how that was gonna go. I obviously had a good feeling about how it would go. And it was amazing. I'm so glad I was there. I would be kicking myself if I wasn't there.
Hmm.
And I think that like having, had meals with you and gotten to hang out with you and walk around, like changes the quality of the conversation that we can have now as well. And all these little Zoom faces are just like real people to me now. So that seems like incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. Like first of all, doing anything is there's a little weirdness in everything we do because we're weird, but it's doubly weird to be doing stuff on the internet, to be trying to communicate with other people via Zoom and via Discord and social media apps and all this stuff. But then when you kind of like break through that wall into the real world to like see how it does change, because it absolutely does. And it's something that you don't understand until you're kind of involved in producing content slash organizing and collaborating with others, and then you cross that divide. But it's weird, and
Hmm.
I find it hard to articulate. I think you do a better job of just kind of explaining how it feeds back into the digital space, and it's not just a 2-dimensional shape. It's like you're a real person, and I knew you were a real person before. um but you're like extra real now. But it's weird because before the internet, there was no such quality of this like extra realness. Um,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Why?
Yeah.
Why did you have um, a good feeling about Theory Underground, about TUCon?
Hmm. That's a good question. Yeah, because I didn't get involved online very much before I decided to go to Boise. I think it was like over the summer, that I kind of joined in. Um, let's see. I think that like when I was considering whether to subscribe or not, I was like really curious about like the dynamics, behind the paywall in the Discord and in the calls and stuff, right? It was like it could be a couple different things. It could be sort of a person or a couple people who are like, "Hello, students, like we will teach you stuff. You will pay us, we give you knowledge." And that might have been cool because I actually, I spent so long sort of in these like freaking like workshop, non-hierarchical, like consensus spaces where like nobody was ever giving a lecture. So I love lectures. I'm into that. I'm into expertise and people, earning their right to talk on something because they've thought long and deep about it. But anyways, so I didn't know if it was going to be, yeah, more kind of a really kind of structured thing. I mean, I didn't really know if the people who were organizing it like even had much of an interest in like getting to know the individual students, right? Like who knows, right? Um, so then I did decide to subscribe. And I was just like really struck very quickly by how clear it was that this was not that there was like a real genuine interest in me right off the bat that I wasn't really expecting. Um, and that like I like volunteering and kind of getting involved in things. And like that was received really warmly. It's not always, right? Sometimes people are like, "Oh, who are you?" Or, like, "Oh, we're doing the thing. You can be here, but like
Hmm.
you can sit over there or whatever." So I was just kind of like yeah, I was impressed by how quickly I was able to get involved in a way that like was meaningful to me and felt more than just like I'm going to learn from this person or from these people. Although that's certainly also happening.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I obviously think Theory Underground has the I don't know, the magic sauce or whatever. But I mean, I'm biased. I'm at this point fully committed, so I would think that we're doing something right. But yeah, I mean, it definitely is a very human project. I think, and
Hmm.
um, I mean, that's what it's about. We're trying to, I don't know, create a space where we can be humans again rather than just, economic producer consumers or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so that's cool, but it's also, it's a good thing that that's true. It's a good thing that you, had a suspicion shit was cool and it was actually cool. It would have sucked if you thought it would be cool and then it sucked. That would have really sucked.
That would have
Um,
sucked. Yeah. And actually, like the reason I was looking for anything in the first place was because I had this like small Marxist reading group and I was like, I'm never gonna read Capital like all by myself. So like let's do this. And I've always been like a pretty reluctant community organizer. Like I'm not particularly good at it and I also hate it and I feel bad while I'm doing it, but I have done it out of necessity at various points. And so, but I don't know, it's like keeping this group going was just like so effortful, it's like herding cats and like when you get to the point where it's like not only is someone not showing up, but they're not even bothering to like tell you they're not going to show up. uh, I was like, all right, I'm not doing this anymore. Um, but I still, it's like, yeah, I want, so I guess I was looking for something to kind of plug into, right? Where it's like, I'm actually willing to put a lot of like effort into something that's like really cool. And that like has a structure that sort of allows everyone to kind of play to their strengths, right? Um, and so kind of after realizing it's like I don't want to be like organizing a reading club, but if I could like find other people to read stuff with, um that would be really amazing. Like that's kind of when I came across it. So it was good timing and yeah, I just know myself. I think I know myself well enough to like, I don't know, I don't want to work against myself anymore, if that makes sense, right? It's like I want to play to my strengths, and someone else hopefully can do the stuff that I hate, and I'll do the stuff that they hate.
Yeah. Um, a lot of the time, I find myself like unwilling to do anything because like I don't want to do anything, dude. I hate everything.
Mhm.
I just want to read books and be smart. Um, but you
I
can't.
don't even want to read the books. I just want to already be smart, though.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't wait till we live in like the future where you can do that. Just like download uh smartness. But I don't think that's gonna happen. I think what's gonna happen is we'll like get to the point where you can download like this is how to do the economic thing better. If they don't replace all the factory workers with robots, like if people are still working in factories, then you'll be able to download like the factory program and stuff. But you won't be able to download like smartness. So you have to do the work, you have to read the books, but you also can't do it like alone in isolation. I spent many years thinking it was possible to do that. And I think part of it was because like it was a retreat from the world, because like I was afraid of the world, and I was I just wanted to retreat. But I also wanted to I wanted to have the cake and eat it too, and be like, but no, I'm actually smart though. Trust me, guys. And then it's like, no, you can't do that. So you got to have a project. Theory Underground is for me, I think it's the only fucking. And look, there's other people too that are doing amazing things. There really are. I love Cadell and Philosophy Portal. I love Daniel and Michelle, the net. Like I love what these people are doing, and they're definitely like part of the conversation or whatever that's happening. But Theory Underground has the magic sauce, and yeah, I'm happy that you found your way here as well, because there is a lot of stuff that Dave does, so none of us have to. Like there's a lot of organizing and like soft skills work that that he handles, because he's aware that these things need to get done and no one else is willing to do them, and so he does all that stuff so we can read the books and or just be the smart people. And that's a journey, and I think we all understand that's a journey. We're not going to be smart overnight, and I don't think I'll ever be smart, but I think the journey, I think like continuing to walk down that road is what matters. I think that's what makes someone smart, is like continuing to climb up the hill. I think if you ever think you've reached the summit, then you're wrong and you lost the game.
yeah,
But,
yeah. I hope I can always see what's wrong with my writing.
yeah.
Always, and it'll change because I'm trying to fix what I can see right now. But like there should always be something.
Yeah. But the cool thing, or one of the many cool things, is like it's also good to see what's right with your writing. And you can't do that in isolation either. Like you either can be like, oh, I'm the coolest, best, smartest motherfucker in the world, or you can do the whole like, oh, I suck so much, I hate everything. But like once you get outside of yourself into a group, people can be like, well, that sucks, but that's actually really cool. So you got to have both, and that's important. But so you coming into Theory Underground and kind of seeing something and crossing that divide is really cool. But you also, like I told you again before we went live, like you have an impressive portfolio, like of stuff you've done. I don't know, like why did you feel the need for something else?
That's a really good question. Yeah. Well, part of it is because I can see what's wrong with my writing. Like I'm lacking a rigor and I know that I am, you know. In some ways I feel like I've been like flying by the seat of my pants with everything that I've made. And I'll probably always feel that way, right? I don't think that'll go away. But at the same time, it's like, no, there's like I know there are like concrete things I can do to improve my thinking and my argumentation and like you said, like you can't do that by yourself. Um and you kind of can't do it like randomly. Like it's not just gonna I think some people like make the mistake of thinking, you know, because people comment on their work or like there's some engagement that necessarily means that their rigor is going to improve and their thinking's going to improve. But like, I don't think that that's necessarily true. Like, I love the engagement. It's really interesting to talk to people, but you really have to stay aware of things like, you know, audience capture or like, you know, who's finding your work and why, and like, what are they going to be not saying, or what are they going to be keeping in mind with what they are saying? And it feels like so often, like, you're not going to get past like I think you're right or I think you're totally wrong and like variations on that unless you're seeking out something more than that. Um and yeah, I think the other part is that like there are a variety of ways that you can kind of engage with people, but a lot of them are like really demanding or superficial. I feel like those are kind of the choices you get. Like superficial, it's like it's easy, it's smooth, it's frictionless. You can get that on social media really easy. Or there's like a huge amount of demandingness. Like, for example, if I were to go to university, which I never have, I would spend, you know, at least 4 years and I would get some rigor, I would get some mentorship. But I would also like not be picking my topics. And it's almost like I would be like practicing what I actually want to do. And I'm like, I'm too impatient for that, you know. I'm like, I want to be thinking in public. I want to be publishing as I'm learning. And I want that to kind of be visible to people. I want like flaws and lack to be visible to people because I want other people to be thinking in public too. So I think like finding something to plug into where everyone is actually like primarily working on their own project and we're not expected to like all get in this giant circle and like constantly be giving each other feedback, but rather like relationships are building over time that are going to result in like feedback and exchange. There's just, yeah, that just feels like this nice mix where it has like the depth without the busy work, I guess, is maybe the best way to put it.
Busy work, busy work, busy work, busy work.
Yeah, I'm sick of it.
Yeah. So on Friday, I think, 7 days ago, we featured your talk among several other talks as part of like the mainline Theory Underground feed that went out live on YouTube. And I think, I mean, there were hundreds of people that have watched it already. There were quite a few people watching it live. Um, and I think everyone who's going to see this is probably likely to have already seen that. But I think your I like your talk. I like where you're coming from, and I like what you're saying. So I don't know if you want to give like a short, if you can give like a short like summation of like your talk.
Yeah, that's a good question. Can I give a short summation of my talk? Let's see. It's funny because I felt like, you know, as I worked on it, like the shape just kept changing. Um, and yeah, I think maybe the main thing. I think the central image that comes to me is from this article by this journalist Li Fang, and it's about these anti-union, like union busters, basically professional union busters that are rebranding as DEI consultants. So they're literally getting hired by bosses to go in and sabotage union drives, but they're doing it with the language and the practices of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So that includes things like um, getting people to be vulnerable and collecting as much personal information as possible that is disclosed straight to the boss. It also involves like starting these affinity groups, right? Identity-based affinity groups, so that you can really sort of build up the resentment between coworkers, and just really feed that, so that they can kind of forget who's creating the conditions of their working life, which is not their coworkers. Um, I learned about that article like several years ago, and it's just like stuck at the front of my brain. And it's like I can't think without thinking around it, you know? Um, because I think it just like captures this moment we're in, perhaps, um, where some of these norms, like around authenticity and vulnerability, honesty, transparency, like most of those sound good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe vulnerability might be a little kind of more controversial, but like who's against honesty?
Mm-hmm.
Who's against transparency, right? Like what kind of fool would like think that authenticity is a bad thing? Um, but they're being used against us in these really interesting ways. And I feel like they're also sort of muddying the waters around like what it means to be a political actor, right?
Mm.
So I think like the way that this relates to my talk is that I was discussing how I've noticed that a lot of people who use sort of radical leftist, terms in their social media profiles, particularly on Instagram, um, don't seem to be involved in politics, like
Mm.
in any way. I'm not talking just like electoral politics. I'm talking about any organization of any size, of any kind, right? Like they are talking about they're using words of politics of radical leftism in complete and total isolation. And there's often like I'm just starting to think that like this language around like social justice and identity appears in some cases to be used as a smokescreen to kind of justify the fact that like these people are actually engaging in like self-care slash self-improvement slash like they're building a career for themselves. Um, that's what they're actually doing, like materially in the world, is they're like trying to improve their lot in the world. But they're kind of giving it this veneer that allows them to say and perhaps also believe that this is like radical, this is revolutionary, that they're trying to sell you t-shirts
Mm.
or whatever their hustle may be.
Yeah. Uh, Fuck that. Yeah. Buy the merch. Buy the radical merch.
Buy the
Um,
merch.
yeah, no, it's crazy, and it's like it's like whoa, that's actually crazy to hear that like union busters are doing this DEI shit because I think it's maybe not that difficult to like problematize the DEI and the woke. Like I think most people, and maybe I'm wrong again because uh, I am not like super duper involved in giving a shit about what's happening, and listening to other people. But I think like we're kind of past the whole woke thing. Like I think for the most part, like the people I talk to that are still like largely committed to the left or whatever, I think they're all like, yeah, the woke stuff's a little out of hand, or it can be out of hand. I think I'm probably wrong about that. But to hear that, like, no, it's actually being used by like union busters and shit. And I don't know, like it's something that makes total sense, but also to be confronted with that, it's pretty gnarly. And I think, now I personally, like I wonder how effective is pushing for unionization, at least here in America. I know Canada is a little different and maybe a little better in a lot of ways. But I know in America, like a lot of places that push for unionization, they just like fire all those employees before they can unionize, and they actually kind of blow up the spot. So I'd like,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you're not wrong. I did salt for a service sector union for a while. And for anybody who doesn't know what that means, it's basically like you're going undercover in a non-union workplace with the intention of helping to unionize it. Spoiler alert, didn't go anywhere in my case. But yeah, so this question of, yeah, like how effective are unions? Like, is that even like where we should be putting our effort? And at the time, like I was like a total punk, and it was so not cool that I was doing this because it was like a real actual like corporate union or
mm,
whatever, right? Like, because I knew people who were um also organizing, but they were organizing coffee shops, and they were doing it through like International Workers of the World. So they were like, those were the cool people. And then I was like the like normie nerd because I like was working with this like established union that like actually exists right now.
so like the Wobblies, like,
Yeah, the Wobblies.
um, there's like stratification in the whole like unionizing world. Like the Wobblies are more punk than actual people who are like actually
Well,
efficacious, or what? Like how does that work?
I mean, I think like the people that I was hanging out with were like dum-dums, right? Like I don't think they actually knew what they were talking about, right? Like, and I think that like I'm trying to remember if like I don't think they had any success, right?
Mm,
And I think there have been some coffee shops and some liquor stores that have unionized around here, but they've all done it through a large established union. They're
yeah.
not Wobblies. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a single wobbly shop around here. All right. So, there's that. But
Yeah, no.
but I get the cynicism, for sure.
That's yeah, it seems like, I mean, the Wobblies are sensational and really performative, and it I think it does make more sense to have actually like professional people. I mean, Jesus Christ, I joined the Wobblies when I don't even know, like I was on drugs, and I was like, that's fucking cool. I'm a
Hell
fucking,
yeah.
like I'm some kind of anarchist. But it meant nothing. Like it was all just, it was this performative act of like, well, this is something I should, like I'm supposed to do, and it meant nothing. But to have people who are actually like productively engaged in that type of organizing makes sense. But we suck. We're stupid. We're all angry, disgruntled, shitty
I
punk
was also
rockers.
a dum dum, by the way. I was also a dum dum. I called them dum dums. We were all dum dums, okay?
Sure. No, yeah, for sure. But so all that aside, like it's still like I can only imagine what it would have been like in all the horrible jobs I've worked, from like, cleaning toilets and driving trucks and moving furniture, and making phone calls, and like all the things I've done. Like I can only imagine what it would have been like to have a union. Like and
Totally.
I think it's probably a net positive. So
Mhm.
like I am maybe cynical, but I'm not. like, well, that's dumb. That's fully a waste of time. I think it's dope, and it's gross to hear that they're using the language of DEI and the woke. And just to say, Jacob in chat, yeah, I'm still pretty woke. He says, I think I'm probably still pretty woke too. I just don't. I don't believe in the woke structure, the woke as such. But I think we should all be cool to each other. I think being shitty sucks. And I think
Totally.
that's what like woke should be about. But when they turn it into this instrumentalized identity categories, like you have to have a quota, you have to have X many category A, X many category B, stuff like that. But to hear that that's actually being used to kind of union bust, it's weird and it's gross. And it's like, well, is the left about like worker solidarity, or is the left about identity category and intersectionality? And
Exactly.
it's
Exactly. Well,
yeah.
yeah, because it's like there are all sorts of like really legitimate criticisms of of unions, especially kind of some large ones like that get to the size where they kind of like their incentives probably change, right? Or their leadership like has a level of power that like, yeah, really like things get complicated. Like even here in British Columbia, right? It's like there's a lot of resource extraction. The Canada's built on resource extraction. So right, like so you could argue that like the effect that the union has on the NDP, the Social Democrat Party here, is like away from environmentalism just
Yeah.
because of like the type of work that people do here, right? And I don't think we can like brush that off and be like, go get a new job to someone who like works in a mill town, right? It's like this is like this is like a real material problem that we need to address if we want to shut down the mill. Like we have to have another plan for people. But so yeah, there's but I would say that like I just don't know of like a better way for workers to be able to negotiate better working conditions, right? Like I just don't think, and I'm open. It's like, hey, if someone's got a better plan, let's do it. But I don't think there is one right now. So I think like, union drives like the fact like you were saying, Nance, like often bosses will like absolutely like just shut down. We've had like a Starbucks here shut down rather than unionize. That's a real thing. The reason for that is because that's how fucking effective unions are, right? Like
It's a good point.
those those people like would that's such a threat to the profit, which doesn't mean that the cafe would no longer be profitable. Let's be real, but they would be less profitable because they'd have to pay people properly. So it's like that's how important unionizing is, you know? It's that risky. It's that much of a threat to the bosses. Like these it's like one of the most real struggles personally I think that like kind of leftists can get themselves involved in is
Mm.
trying to unionize a shop like because it's everybody's livelihoods on the line, right? And you're asking your coworkers with families and responsibilities to put their livelihood on the line for the chance that y'all can fucking negotiate together against the boss, right? Instead of it just being each individual person, being treated largely disposably. So yeah, I can't become a complete cynic about it, but it's hard. It's like it's so hard and I've been there like trying to, I'm like 22 and I'm talking to like this family man and trying to convince him to like, you know, put like take this huge risk like and he's looking at me like who the hell are you, right? Like it's real stuff for sure. Much more so than like a lot of sort of activism I was involved with that had a lot more to do with like identity and
Mm-hmm.
representation and all that stuff. It's like, no, this is like literal bread and butter right here, right?
Yeah, I think the family is a topic that came up over to UConn multiple times, and I mean it comes up all the time. And we can problematize the family, and I think we should. But I also know that work is a huge contributor to destruction of families. I mean, I spent years working legitimately 16-hour days, 5 to 6 days a week, like legit, like not exaggerating, but like that was it in order to like, pay bills on a shitty house that's too small and falling apart and not safe, and buy shitty food that's not nutritious enough, and like all the things like in like every fight that would come up, all the discord in the relationship ultimately stemmed from money. It stemmed from the fact that like we're fucking poor and we just can't afford to fully develop and allow our children to fully develop. And so it's huge. Like it's maybe it gets sensationalized and people talk and people react emotionally and all these things, but it also is true that like families are like ripped apart economically, and unions are one thing that could have like a huge impact for the better.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool. I think it's dope. I know I don't have the endurance or the stick to itiveness or whatever that it would take to like really be engaged in that type of organizing. So I think anyone that really can and be principled and have like a rigorous approach and have a robust understanding of all of that, I think it's admirable.
Same. I couldn't hack it either. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough. It's real. And I ended up having like significant enough, disagreements with the union I was involved in to, yeah, come out of it with some pretty serious criticisms. But yeah, I think it's like, that's what's so interesting about like all these social services that the left talks about, right? Like for example, like if a man dies like at a workplace or in a war, like what happens to his wife and family, right? Like um that's something that like I mean, maybe I'm just not very smart or well read, but like I was reading about like the history of my town, and I didn't realize this, and maybe this is how it happened everywhere, but basically women did what social services do now or have come to do. And that literally happened in this town where it's like, yeah, the women were the ones who would like, fundraise and redistribute if there was a man who died, like, and would help take care of that family. And like these kind of collective like ways to take collective responsibility for one another, like that there was no, office that did that. So
Hmm.
women did that, and eventually some of that was taken over by an office. um but it's just interesting to think about like, yeah, how do we, and that's something that unions have done, at certain times in certain places. I mean, there used to be halls, like public halls from unions, so that like all the kids and the wives and the families of the union workers could all go eat, you know um like, yeah, I think it's like even the experience of being in a union is probably like a lot more isolated than it has been in the past. Because it really like there are these traditions that like really kind of like could give someone like a lot of security, that it's like even if something happens to me, like
Hmm.
this is a brotherhood, like these people will take care of my family if I need them to, and I think there's like, yeah, something pretty powerful about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and all the social services doing the nanny state thing, and again kind of cutting out the legs from underneath the population. Yeah, blah blah blah. It's all these, compounding issues. It's all very complex, and it sucks, and it's makes me sad. So I like Rachel Dolezal.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't like fully like her, but like when she got canceled or whatever for coming out and being like, I'm transracial, like
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, not me too, but I was like, yeah, I support that. I think everybody, not everybody, but like it's very, it's more mainstream to get behind recognizing gender as a construct, which gender is a construct, right? But that doesn't mean we can, just completely ignore it. Constructions
Hmm.
are constructed in the world for whatever reasons and blah, blah, blah. Whatever. It's more mainstream to be able to get behind that recognition that gender is a construct. But it's weird that people are so weird about like seeing race as a construct as well. Like,
Hmm.
I want to take up this position of like just like unfettered support for Rachel Dolezal. Now, I don't have this position. I think she's a bit silly, but I also think like what she's saying is just as maybe not just as valid, and not everything she's saying, because it's not like I even know exactly what she says or how she says it, but just the fact that like, yeah, race is also a construct, so we can also problematize it, and we can also like maybe spend some time thinking about it and getting around it in various ways.
Hmm. I
But
love that
it's
you brought up Rachel Dolezal. I was like, what? But no, I think she's fascinating. I really do, in this sense, that like, I don't know, watching the documentary about her, it's like, it seems to me that this is like an earnest position
Mhm.
for her, which is, yeah, again, blah, blah, not about defending her, blah, 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 whatever, caveat, caveat. But it's more just like, it's like she lost so much and she continued to lose because she wouldn't like disavow
Mhm.
herself or the way that she identified, and she never has, to this day. And I think that that's quite fascinating. Not that like everyone would have forgiven her if she had like apologized and like kind of admitted her wrongs, but there would have been potentially a benefit to her doing that, and she never did. So I think, yeah, there's something about that that's like compelling, and it feels I don't know, does it? Okay, I'm curious what you think about this, Nance, because I think that like in some cases of like, if you want to call it race faking or race fraud, which is like a secret special interest of mine,
Mm. Mm.
um it seems like very just like calculated. It's like, this, I will get money if I say that I am indigenous. And
For
like,
sure.
it's that
Elizabeth
simple.
Warren, like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Lots of people have like one Cherokee
Dude,
grandfather or whatever, right?
my
Uh-huh.
my cousins get native benefits. My
Oh,
and
interesting.
my first cousins, and they're just as white as I am, but
Right.
they got their registry, they get their benefits, and I'm like, whoa, that's gnarly, dude.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Like, yeah, the complexity is extraordinary, right? For sure. Because it's like, anyways, this could be a whole talk on its own, because the like whole pretendian phenomenon is so maybe even bigger up here in Canada. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of like recent funding for Indigenous people to do various types of projects. But it's like, not a clear category, right? Like there are adoptees who like don't even know what tribe they're from. There are
Mm.
um there's people with status. There's some nations that were just like declared extinct. So if you're from that nation, you can't get status. Like the complexity is huge. But yeah, it seems to me that there are some race fakers who are just straight up, they wake up one day and they're like, okay, I'm going to pretend to be this and it's going to benefit my career. And then there seems to be another category that's like where there is like a genuine belief um in a racial identity that would not be widely recognized by other people. Um I think that's like an important
Yeah.
distinction. What do you think?
I think um yeah, like I grew up in a predominantly Chicano area, the Mexican American, like predominantly Hispanic, and like everybody, like we were all just like that was our culture. in Phoenix, Arizona, growing up, it was just this kind of Latinized Chicano culture. And I didn't know that was constructed, we'll say, for me anyway, until I left, until I left the neighborhood and realized I'm white. What? And I had, and it's not like people were telling me you're white, don't act that way. But I mean, it's definitely caused tension in my life. Like, my habitus is just that. And I do identify more with what gets called like urban or inner city than I do with whiteness. And now, I'm also like Irish and Cherokee, largely, like my family. So we're poor white trash. So we don't have reliable family history. Like it's all just kind of like whatever. I was born into the world and they were like, fuck you, you suck, or no, or whatever. But like a lot of white people, like they cling on to being Irish. Oh, I'm Irish. And yet, my family, some of them have Irish pride tattoos. And Irish pride actually gets used as secret Aryan Brotherhood shit in prisons here in America. Like they don't want to like fully have a swastika tattoo, so they'll get a shamrock tattoo. So
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, that itself is very complex. But also, like, I know a lot of white people that really cling on to I'm Irish, because they came from urban inner city environments or whatever, or maybe like super rural environments, but like they come from this economic underclass. And if they're not welcomed into the larger milieu of wherever it is, if it's Black, if it's Hispanic or whatever, like if they have to kind of take up the mantle of whiteness for whatever reason, they'll cling on to, well, I'm not white, I'm Irish. But yeah, dude, like I've thought a lot about race, and it makes me mad because I just want to be like, yeah, Rachel Dolezal's dope, like, because it's a construct and it's used. I mean, and it's also real. In like, just to say it's constructed doesn't mean it's total fake bullshit. But it is also a thing that kind of emerges from conditions, from groups of individuals kind of coping with the world and coping with currents and tendencies and stuff. We all need a form of belonging, this and that. And sure, yeah, go do whatever you want to do if you could do it in a constructive, pro-social way. But when it starts to be used as this economic thing to segregate and to separate and to kind of quell working class organization or whatever, then it becomes gross. Or even when it becomes like merch. I saw a TV show the other day, and a woman was like, as the first queer Black something female. So she had 4 qualifiers onto, and it was almost every time she spoke, she always had to qualify her statement with this, like, well, as categories X, Y, Z, and A, this is what I'm saying. And like, that's gross too, because it's like, dude, just say what you have to say. Like, you're turning me into a reactionary when you keep saying shit like that. And again, I think I'm pretty woke. Like, I think I am, but I start to feel resentment toward people who can't get over that. And it's gross. It's gross when I see me doing it, because then I realize, like, oh, I'm getting some kind of twisted enjoyment out of this, so I need to step back and like divest my emotions from it. But it's also true. Like, it's also happening. Like, other people around you in the world are feeling resentful towards you. So stop doing that, and maybe we'll have far less reactionary sentiment. But That's
Hmm.
it. That's not the only problem. Like
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying because it's like I when I started writing, like when I started my Substack, um well actually at the beginning I was scared to write about it, but then eventually I decided to write about like leaving social justice culture. And yeah, I don't know. I got invited like after that onto like an anti-woke kind of YouTube channel. And it's like a very kind email invitation and everything. Um but I really like something about it. I was like, oh, I don't know. And I thought about it and I decided against it. And it kind of came down to what you're saying, where it's like, you know, has, this certain sort of Puritan identitarianism that's like very competitive, and basically decides like who is important and who is not and who is smart and who is not. Like, is all that stuff like really awful? Yeah, it is. I was in it. I was also perpetrating it on other people. It sucks. But like, do I think that that's like what's ruining America or whatever, right? It's like,
yeah.
no. And like that's dumb. Like it's dumb if you think that because there are
Hmm.
like much bigger fish to fry, right? So it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, I was part of like this subculture and we were doing this crazy stuff and I want to talk about it, but I don't want to talk about it in this framing that like, yeah, like you said is like reactionary or like kind of exaggerates about its influence, right? Because again, it's like the problem is the union busting, right? Not like the facade that's put on top of the union busting, if that makes sense. Like, and you
Yeah.
don't want to confuse the two.
Yeah, but we don't. The world that we live in doesn't work that way. The world that we live in rejects nuance, rejects complexity. Um, Everything has to be black and white. So yeah, it's difficult to talk about. I avoid talking about it for that reason because it's like you can't point at one thing or even two things or even three things and say those are the ultimate source of the problem. Like it's this huge complex structural issue, and it requires trust, and it requires like a commitment to understanding one another if you're going to try to talk about that with another person, which is why I avoid it. I think um, it's unproductive, and it's also counterproductive. Like it does generate either reactionary sentiment, or it pushes people further into this like extreme form of like, I am persecuted, I am this and I am that. Like I think it's
Hmm.
just all around the board, it's not worth talking about unless you're committed and you have like trustworthy interlocutors, which is why or which is one of the reasons why I'm excited about Why Left, the new Theory Underground podcast, because I trust Dave and Benjamin to deal with that kind of subject matter. I know them both, and they're trustworthy interlocutors. And if anyone's going to have that conversation, I would prefer it to be them. I'm definitely not. Like I don't like it makes me sad. It makes me want to just
Hmm.
not. Um, and yeah, like I notice in myself resentment building, and then I feel gross, and I'm like, well, fuck, I am an asshole, and I
Hmm.
am an asshole, and that's the problem. Like we should be trying to de-assholify ourselves, not leaning into it and being like, that's the actual problem. Like, no, bitch. Like, from my perspective, um, like our situation in relation to capital is the problem. But then when I
Hmm.
say that shit, people are like, what are you talking about, dude? And then I'm like, well, do you have 17 hours so I can like explain it to you? And they're like, no. So I do struggle to engage in really any productive conversations with anyone outside of, um, I guess, like prearranged conversations where it's like, yeah, we're committed to having a conversation rather than just doing the internet thing, doing the social media thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I really feel that. Like, I think about that sometimes where I'm like, for example, if I'm critiquing like contemporary anti-racism, does that sound to people who don't have the context like I'm into racism, right?
mm,
Like, you don't like
mhm.
anti-race, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know, it's like something that, yeah, I'll continue to grapple with. But yeah, and it's interesting, like noticing sometimes, like when I get newsletter subscribers, it's so funny because I'll get one that is like Scottish Irish settler
Mm.
on, indigenous territory, like a cab, no turfs, no swerves. And then like the very next person who signs up will be like anti-woke mom, like
Mm.
blah blah. Like, and it's just like I personally love that. Like there was a time when I would have like felt like I was like responsible for who was listening to me. And I don't
Mm.
think that that's like entirely false, but at the same time, it's like, no, I want to write for a very wide audience. I want both of those people like reading this stuff. And what I do want to do is like pay attention to like the tenor of what I put out because I'm not looking to like sensationalize like the wildest people on the left and make fun of them and point at them or whatever, right? Like we'll do some of that because it's like entertaining and fun, and cathartic for some of us. But yeah, it's like I think yeah, it's this interesting question kind of around audience building, right? Where it's
Mm.
like you don't want to kind of paint yourself into a corner where, the people that you've attracted um want something out of you that you end up feeling like obligated to give. And I kind of wonder, like with Theory Underground too, right? It's like you want to attract the right kind of people that
Mm.
will like push you in the way that you want to go rather than like kind of backing you into somewhere where all of a sudden like you're like, how did I get here? And like,
Mm.
why am I doing what I'm doing anymore, you know?
Yeah. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Um, yeah. Cesar in the chat says, I have a question if you're open to it. What momentum do you
Yeah.
feel after TUCON?
I love that. Go for it, Nance.
That's his question. What momentum do you feel after TUCON? You want me to answer it?
I want you to answer.
Oh.
I'd love to hear.
um, I want you to answer it. I'll answer it first. Um, what momentum? I feel a lot of momentum. I feel a lot of this kind of like positive peer pressure to deliver on the, I guess, promises I made myself, if you want to use that language, of engaging in conversation, trying to get outside myself, and trying to produce worthwhile work on, in the form of conversation, argument, papers, and stuff like that. But I also feel kind of like reacquainted with what I saw in Theory Underground in the first place. And that was like this vehicle for creating new conditions of possibility. I think at the time when it was in its nascency, I was kind of just like black pilled, and I was kind of over everything. And then fucking Dave was all like enthusiastic and gregarious, and he was like, "We're gonna do this thing, and it's gonna change the world." And he didn't say these things. That's what I heard. He was like, "We're gonna do this, and it's gonna change the world." And I was like, "We're gonna do that, and it's gonna change the world," in this way of creating conditions of possibility for other people to actually do the thing that maybe I thought I was doing all along, or that I had been pretending to do all along. And that's like just care about the world and care about people and care about the fact that like we all are reduced to like nothing but data and kind of economic producer consumers. And I want more, and I can either like throw a fit and just like dive deep into my own belly button, or I can actually try to get active, get engaged, get involved in as you had said, like plug into something that plays to people's strengths. I don't know what my strengths are, but I do know that like if I can make myself available to help other people feel like they're being productive, or kind of show other people the way. Like if people are kind of sitting back and they're just passively consuming content and they're unhappy, it's like if I can show you like, no, there's actually, you can do something more, then like that's it. So I feel like that, almost like a romantic, in a good way though, like not in a silly way, drive to that. But I also do feel good about the fact that like the stuff I'm writing and thinking about, like I've received kind of confirmation from others that I'm barking up some trees that are at least in the correct neighborhood. And that feels good too, because it actually does feel good to you know, put something out into the world that is worthy of being out in the world. So I don't know. That's your answer, Cesar. What's up, Evan Wells? So what's your answer?
Oh man. That's very cool, Nance.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, momentum coming out. Like I'd always wanted to like go to a conference, talk at a conference. Never did until last week. So yeah, I think like hearing you talk about it, Nance, like yeah, there's something about like having real actual physical people like tell me what they appreciate about my work that was really cool. Like that doesn't happen much because I write online, and so
Mm,
I get nice emails and comments. But yeah, there's something totally different about um getting like to sit down and like discuss your work at length with someone over dinner or whatever.
mm,
So in terms of momentum, like I think maybe one of the big things I'm taking away or carrying forward with is like um taking myself seriously or taking my work seriously.
ooh, mm,
And I think like I don't mean like, I always want to have a sense of humor and, like blah blah blah. But I mean just in terms of like, I'm basically someone who is like trying to slowly eventually, be a public intellectual,
mm,
and I've never gone to university, right? So that's
mm,
like a weird path. That's a weird choice. And I've kind of been working away on it, and I'm like, okay, like I think this is working. I think that this can happen. I think I can do this. Um but I don't know, maybe I'm completely insane. Maybe like everyone in my life is just like, okay, like patting me on the head about it. I don't know, right? So so it's kind of cool to like meet some people who don't know me and who only like, know me on the basis of my work, who, think that there's something to it. And like that's valuable, right?
mm,
Having it not be, I mean, I respect and appreciate my mom, but like I have to
mm,
take her appreciation with a grain of salt in the way that I don't have to um when I'm at a conference. And so yeah, I think that like the thing that I think I'm the most excited about coming out of it is like I just feel like a lot of like long-term relationships like either started or were strengthened at TUCON. And like
mm,
I've been in enough like organizations and groups that it's like, yeah, sometimes they split, sometimes they dissolve, sometimes they change. Like there's no way for any of us to know what Theory Underground will look like or be in 10 or 20 years, or even if it will exist. There's just no way to know. But I kind of think that like regardless of that, like the network that we're building like feels like there's going to be a resilience there
Mm.
kind of apart from like the structure, if that makes sense, which like I want the structure to work and keep going, but I think that like yeah, I take comfort in the fact that it's like um that it's more than the structure, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, because it's like it's not that we're like centering the people, but I guess centering like well, we're centering the milieu. Like we like it is um like I don't think or I think most of us anyway didn't come to be like this is um my ultimate awesome knowledge that I'm sharing with you. I think this kind of understanding that it's a work in process is kind of implicit, and I think that's different. I don't know. Again, I'm biased, so I don't know if I'm like a trustworthy judge, but I do think it's different. I think it comes down to like that method comes down to the centering the milieu, getting outside oneself, and all these things. And yeah, having validation from other people who are trustworthy and respectable is huge. I wrote a blog for fucking a really, really, really long time, and like it just got to the point where I was like an algorithm, and I was just like bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing bong. I don't care what I'm saying. I'm just doing this because I fucking have to do this or whatever. And I never once got any kind of external validation or feedback that made me believe that I wasn't just farting into the wind. Um, yeah, and I mean, I guess I often am farting into the wind, but at least here at Theory Underground, people will be like, that smells funny. And it's good. That's good to know. I I wonder you approached everything with a poise um that like for me from my perspective like made me feel like you were just very comfortable. Um were you?
I think I was, yeah. Um, yeah, that's an interesting observation because I was like, whoa, I used to like be socially anxious. Like I used to like, I don't know. I don't want to like, I'm not talking capital A here, but like, walking into a
Mm.
room and being like, I'm just gonna like assume everyone in here hates me, even though no one has ever like indicated that. And then, someone comes up and they're like, oh, hey, Kier. And I'm like, wow, like this person doesn't hate me. And so I dealt with some of that when I was younger. But yeah, I didn't have anything like that. I did feel very comfortable around people. Um, I think the only thing maybe was that like I have like limited energy and like health stuff, and it's actually a lot easier to like fake not having that on Zoom here in
Yeah.
my own home, in my own chair. So yeah, I think that was like interesting, like maybe one of the pieces of like being in real life. Um, that I don't think yeah, so I think that like at points there might have been sort of like I was kind of pushing myself a bit further than I normally would, or maybe like physically uncomfortable. But um yeah, I think like yeah, socially and emotionally I was like yeah, very very happy. And part of it was like I just like didn't sleep.
Mm.
I was like too excited, you know? So like that was starting to get to me by like day 3 and 4. I was like, all right, like, but I'm back home, I'm sleeping again, so all is well.
Good, good, good. So, I guess on the topic as it seems, we're moving toward this, like actually reflecting on TUCON. What, I don't know. I guess like, do you have any reflections on being a host, an MC for the 2 days? You got to see what, 9 presentations from other people?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Um, I've I think I've seen like 4 or 5 of the ones that you ran. And I like them. I like Todd. Todd's a cool dude. I didn't get to spend much time with him in Boise, but just watching his presentation, like I was like, oh man, I like this guy. And I mean, I was like that in person too, but yeah, but I don't know. Like, do you have any thing you feel like sharing about like how that went?
Yeah, totally. I love doing it, and yeah, definitely like it pushed me like I kind of want to rise to the occasion, kind of increasing my skills on the technical side of things for sure. Because like yeah, like the first panel from my end was easier because everyone was in person, and then the second panel there were a couple more tech layers going on. So it was a cool learning experience, and Nancy were like super solid and like so patient and available to help figure that stuff out, which was great. But yeah, I think I'm like there were some really cool talks in the rooms I was in, and I'm also excited to like rewatch them because I did have like half my brain on
Mm-hmm.
boring things like levels and the timing and so on. Um, but yeah, Todd's talk was really striking. That was in the film room, and it was largely on AI. And it was really fascinating. And it really made me wonder, like, do I even know what AI is, right? Because he did
Mm.
kind of emphasize that it's like, of course, like the most sort of mm, visible or like recognizable face of AI for us as humans is probably like the chat bots, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we can have discussions with them and they communicate in a similar way that we do. But in the world of like AI and its possibilities and potential, like the chatbot is like, it's gotten a lot of funding because it's so commercially viable, but that doesn't reflect like that it's like the most important or even one of the most important kind of innovations that we'll see come out of AI.
Mm.
Yeah, so I thought that really kind of got me thinking.
So on that note, um, it is weird that the most contact anyone has with arguably the most important technological revolution since um, the printing press, maybe. Um,
Do you sound like a mouse on purpose? I just have to check.
oh, I sound like a mouse? Uh-oh. I'm a mouse, dude. I'm a fucking mouse. Fuck you, dude.
No, okay, now it's better. I hit a button.
Okay, great. I was like, maybe this is like totally on purpose, but I have to know. Okay.
That's funny, dude. That's
You
what
make a
happened.
great mouse.
That's what happened to my my fucking talk on suicide. I
Oh
roasted
no.
the audio. But like 2/3
If
of the
you
way
had a
through, I
mouse
fixed it.
voice talk on suicide, that would have been really
No.
cool, actually.
Yeah, that would be fucking funny. Yeah. AI. I mean, it's the future. But the most contact everybody has with it is the chatbot. Which is ultimately just a search engine, kind of. I mean, it's not just that, but it's not much more impressive than technology that was developed in the 1970s. It's just like a shiny new paint job. and that's interesting. But it is also true that it is so important because it just dominates everything. And in Samuel Lunkar's talk, where he was talking about science and the humanities and how we've kind of artificially separated science and the humanities to create experts and hyper specializations and this and that. Great talk. I love Samuel Lunkar, his piece in Underground Theory, mnemosiny and the something. It's a great piece. But so he was talking about AI, and he said AI is just us. And yeah, but like I have problems with that statement, and I'm hoping that I'll be ready to talk about them the next time Samuel joins us, and pretty sure that's in the works right now to be coming up soon. But I don't think he's wrong about what he's saying. I just think there's a better way to say what he's saying. And like when he says AI is just us, I think that like it misses the part that it is just us, but it's like the smallest, dumbest part of us. Like, what is AI? It's this new thing, and it's like ruling the world, and it kind of determines our conditions of possibility for what we can do and what we do in our daily lives. But nobody knows what it is, and everybody thinks it's just this idiot box that returns like shitty answers to prompts. And there's people now who are prompt engineers. Like there are actually people who make money. I just saw the other day someone like they were like, I give courses on prompt engineering. I was like, whoa, dude, that's fucking I mean, good job, good for you, but I don't know, it just seems silly. I don't know what I was gonna say, but
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like that talk sort of like, opened this Pandora's box for me where I was, and it reflected like, I don't know, Todd has like clearly thought like so deeply and carefully about these questions around like film and AI and sort of the humanity or lack thereof of AI and how, you know, whether we dress AI up to look, recognizable to us or not, like what the effects of that are, So it definitely like, I kind of love a talk where I'm like, wow, I don't know anything by the end of it. So that was a really a striking one. And I'd say like Anne's talk in the film room, is part of what kind of got me thinking about like um the role that women played, before being in the workforce in kind of providing all these various social services that we now associate with the state. I don't know, this like question of like what like who does those things now, or how do those things get done? Like, do we still value those things? I thought that was like a really striking piece of her talk, and it kind of reminded me that it feels so often like, I don't know, questions about women in work are like so like superficial and like boring and like, I don't know, like they kind of like, it's a much more fascinating question to be like, wait, like what happened to, all of this labor that had previously been done like outside of the labor market? Like where did it go? Who's doing it? There's like, I've heard people talk about how there's like kind of this volunteer crisis, right? It's like there's nobody to keep all of these various like nonprofits going, and there's still like it's older people that are still kind of holding it down. Because like who has the time and energy to spare to kind of take up the mantle? And I don't know, it kind of made me think about how it just feels like so many things are getting monetized as well. Like, I don't know, friendship, like even the way
Mm.
people talk about like
Mm.
emotional labor, like as if it's some sort of like extractive process, that we should like take like, I don't know, keep a spreadsheet of or something. I don't know. It's I was just thinking about like all these things that used to be favors that we used to
Mm.
do for one another, um that have just like become these yeah, like exchanges.
Mm.
Even just like I'm thinking about how like, there's lots of family cabins here in BC, and thinking about how like it used to be like, oh hey, like you want to go up, sure, the key's under the mat, right? And now like, and I'm so glad and grateful to get to do this. I'm gonna go stay at a friend's family cabin, and it's amazing, but we did it through Airbnb, right? Because
Mm.
there's like insurance, and like there are these various like bureaucratic reasons that it can't just be the key under the mat anymore. um
Mm.
and so, anyways, and always kind of gets me um thinking about these sort of like social forces that kind of feel like under-examined, or if they are examined, it feels like, I don't know, it's almost like culture war fodder, or like you're
Mhm.
very quickly accused of like, I don't know, being trad or something like that. When like even talking about the family, right? And like whether there's value in the family structure, like feels like this like backwards thing somehow.
Yeah, it sucks. Like um I have a lot to say about the family, but I've never felt comfortable expressing it. For
Hmm.
like for that reason, like I mean I've lived I come from a family, if you didn't know. Um and like to have a family that's just like totally fucking destroyed due to being poor white trash, or due to like the nanny state coming in and saying like, you like I love my grandpa, but he was a racist, like fucked up, abusive dude. Um, but like his what little relationship I was able to have with him was so huge to me, and like such a, I think, constructive thing. Like he kind of provided a framework for me for some kind of masculinity, some kind of like responsibility, some kind of even care, like the type of care that comes from like um I physically want to care for you, like that type of care, like that's important stuff. But there seem to be tendencies that want to like preclude people like that having families and having like relations with their families. And I mean, I worked in juvenile corrections for years, and I saw a lot of kids who were removed from their fucking families and put in horrible places and stuff. I don't know. The family's huge, and yeah, I do like the way Anne talks about. I do like the way Anne talks about nurture, and the way she makes it clear that like there is a place for the womanly role or whatever in society, and it's been turned into something you have to pay for. And then the services that you pay for actually suck and just make everything worse. Yeah, but people would be like, "Oh, she's just some reactionary trad bitch," and that's fucking crazy, dude. Um, yeah.
Yeah, she's incredibly smart and thoughtful, and it's like, I don't know. I think that like I guess one of my hot takes is that, like, I don't know, it does feel like there's a strain of feminism that's like becoming more and more disembodied and just like, and I don't mean that, like, here's the thing. I don't mean that like in this essentialist way of like body parts and what is a woman, blah blah blah. I like don't care that much about that stuff. But what I mean is like sort of like there are these like real effects of like living in a female body, and that includes trans women. I've watched trans women like be like have their breasts groped, right? Like
Mm.
it's not essentialist, but the point is like if like the body gets just completely removed because womanhood or femininity or femaleness or whatever become like this like completely and exclusively like metaphysical or like as existential or just like an essence that you feel or a spirit or something like that, like I don't know, there's like a lot less room to talk about like, you know, Anne was talking about there's posters all over Boise State University about like getting like young women to like sell their eggs. You know, it's like, or the push for people to freeze their eggs and pay like
Mm.
tens of thousands of dollars a year to keep them frozen, and then to push like having kids like further and further down the road. Like, I don't know, there and surrogacy, like there are just like a lot of like very like the effects that like hormones and IVF like have on a body, the effects that birth has on a body, like there's just I don't know, it sucks if it feels like any discussion of any of that is like considered regressive or second wave or
Mm.
essentialist or whatever, because it's like I don't know, like birth, like sometimes birth is like this permanently disabling event that like a person like never fully recovers from. And like I don't know, are we supposed to like, is that supposed to be outside of the scope of feminism, or like I don't know. I find again these questions of sort of like identity and representation and all this stuff. It's like sure, it's interesting. But again, like if we're getting like less and less material, like I guess at a certain point I'm like, okay, I think we should circle back, because like we're not transcending our biology with like
Mm.
surrogacy and IVF and like all this shit, right? It's like these are having like very real physical consequences on people, so what's up with that? You know? And
Mm.
it's not even just like a women thing or whatever. It's like sperm counts are down too. That's interesting, isn't it? Like, what's up with that?
Microplastics. No, it's like there is a small class of people maybe who very much are living in this future where they kind of have overcome the limits of the human body, and it's actual for them that they can do all these magical, wonderful, super awesome things, but that's predicated on all this kind of experimentation on us, on the masses, and it's horrifying. And if you say, well, maybe that's not the coolest thing in the world, you get dropped into a bucket of deplorables, and that's insane. Like, and then again, you kind of create more reactionary sentiment, and you push people further off into this, like, well, if you say I'm a fucking, reactionary asshole, then I might as well just be a reactionary asshole. Like, if I can't escape this label that you've levied on me, then why should I try to get outside of it? I'll go ahead and I'll do the thing, and I'll vote for the the scary bad man who's gonna swoop in and save me at the end of the day. But it really sucks. And ultimately, like, we are the cost that this very small class of people up at the top are paying without even seemingly being aware of the fact that they're paying for it. Because I don't think those people are evil vampires. I think they're just as silly and scared and wonderful as we are, but they can't see the kind of structural connection that their way of life has to everything else. So it sucks, and it's important. And I love that there does seem to be young women who are like celebrating their womanness. It sucks to see there are a lot of young girls who are like rejecting femininity, womanness, and they're being pressured to not embrace that, and that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So what, like, if I were to ask you right now, if you could choose 4, I guess, talks to like put out right now,
Oh boy. Mm-hmm.
what do you think would be the 4?
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say On Limits to Energy
Mm.
from Evan. Oh, this is so tough. Okay, I'm gonna go with Anne and Todd from the film room. And oh no, the last one. I'm gonna throw Chris Catrone in there as well.
He did
The film
Everything
talk.
Everywhere All at Once.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I caught part of that, but I didn't see the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think all of those were remarkable. And I want to say about the ones that I didn't pick, they were also remarkable. And I think it's like some of the reasons that I didn't name those ones is because I'm like, I gotta go back in and I gotta dig in and I gotta like let it marinate, you know? So
Yeah, all of these talks, like the idea is they'll all be kind of featured and centered and celebrated because they're all worthwhile, for sure. But yeah, Anne's talk is dope. Todd's talk is dope. Evan's talk is actually, so in, I think it was Portland. I can't remember if it was Portland or Seattle because I don't know the difference between those two places. But one of those two, we met up and hung out and ate pizza, and we were talking about limits to energy. And I was like, immediately, I was like, no, you're wrong, and let me tell you why you're wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And it was kind of a fun little back and forth that we had. Because I don't think he's wrong. Like, I think he's right, but I also I think it's like yes, and it's like, yeah, you're right about this, but here's what I have to add on to what you're saying. But that, I don't think I've heard many other people. Yeah, Portland. Okay, for sure. Sorry, Evan. I don't know the difference between Seattle and Portland, man. It's not my fault. Maybe I guess, yeah, it is. I haven't heard many people talking seriously about that. They're either like, oh, technology and energy consumption, and technology is gonna solve all our problems and we'll live in the cool future. Or they, reject modernity, return to monkey. They do the primitivist thing. And I think we need some type of like contemporary Luddite movement where it's not that we're like afraid of machines or afraid of the future, but we're like very aware of their limits and what they're doing to us and how they're changing us and how they're changing the planet and how we are currently exhausting our resources. And most people talking about that don't seem to have that level of nuance or don't seem to respect the complexity. So
Yeah, exactly. Like I have been involved in some environmental activism and surrounded by a lot of environmental activists. And I don't know, it feels like yeah, there are people that are like very doom-pilled. There are And I think there are a lot of people that, like, I don't know, seem to have taken an ideological stance more than a scientific one, mostly because most of us don't have scientific backgrounds. So we're kind of relying on vibes, honestly. I think a lot of people.
mm.
Um, so yeah, it feels like everything feels so urgent and so important and so like that yeah, being able to have like the type of conversation that Evan's starting with his talk is like not happening enough, where it's like yeah, we have to get really like we have to talk about degrowth. I'm so fascinated by that, right? Because it's like it does seem to me that the chances of us being able to continue our current like energy use and consumption um like forever into the future, that seems wrong unless there's some huge breakthrough that I don't know about, right? Because it's easy to say like, oh yeah, let's do solar and wind and yay, fun. But it's like, again, the actual like hard limits of the science are such that like, yeah, we can't just like, it's a lot more complicated, right? To replace our current systems. And anyways, but then like, yeah, degrowth often seems like this, well, I don't know. It seems impossible. It seems
Mm.
impossible to ask like one person to take one less car drive a week than they do, right? Including myself. I'm like, I don't want to drive less, but like, but I should, shouldn't I? Like, so I don't know. I really appreciated like yeah, Evan's talk a lot.
Yeah. You should take one less car ride a month or whatever. You're a fucking horrible
Yeah, yeah.
person if you don't. You're bad. You're bad, and it's all your fault. And that makes me sleep at night to be able to blame others for structural problems.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, could we reverse course? Probably not. Is it would it be desirable? I don't know. Like I don't think I could return to the 1990s. I don't. Like I am so reliant on my own personal energy use and the conversion of resource to waste. I don't think I don't think it's possible, but something must be done. So let's start having that conversation. Let's start taking it seriously. And like we need more I don't know, Marxists or something who are like versed in STEM, science, technology, like we do. I've been I've been trying to read math. I've been reading Euclid and like really trying to grapple with it because I just have no I'm like a drunk baby when I'm trying to understand those things, and it's like, well, I want to understand it, no one else is talking about it. We either have these freaky optimists or the freaky doom pillars, and I guess I'm probably like the doom pillar guy, but I don't want to be the doom pillar guy because that sucks too. So Chris's talk, can you break that down a little bit for me, or no?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I can. I just remember it was super engaging. I feel like so much happened at the conference that everything like blurs together. But I just felt like what really struck me actually, if I'm honest about Chris, was like the delivery was really amazing. And I was like, oh, this is someone who like knows how to speak.
Mm.
So I think it was like I was just like so drawn into it. There was like this magnetism, and he has this thing he does after he says like a dry, clever joke where he just sort of does this. And I just like, I was so charmed. So if you're hearing this, Chris, I don't mean to insult you that I can't remember more about the details of the presentation, but yeah, I was just like, it was just such a delight. And I noticed like in the crowd, in the in-person crowd, like I think everyone was like engaged at
Mm.
a level, like a deeper level than the other talks. So that's what really stood out to me about that one.
Yeah, I do tend to get lost in Chris. Uh, I think today's Friday, right? Yeah. So tomorrow he'll be giving another lecture in the Introduction to Marxism. Um, he's good. He is very good at talking. He's very good at lecturing. He's very good at explaining things to people. He's also a cool guy. We went out in Chicago and hung out with him, and he's different in real life than he is on screen, but he's better. So like
Hmm.
the cool Chris Catrone guy that you get to see on the screen is magnified and augmented in really cool ways when you get to hang out with him in persons. It'd be cool if you get to do that someday too. Yeah, I caught the end of his talk, and he was talking about like this kind of nihilism or ennui or whatever it is. It's kind of just like diffuse in the culture right now. And I don't remember if he was saying it's like accelerated in Gen Z or not. I know he likes to talk about millennials a lot. And we can have like we've had our disagreements with him in the past because it's like I don't want you to talk for me, old man. Even though he gets a lot of things right, there's still some things that maybe he might be a little heavy-handed with the whole generational cohort and you millennials this and this and this and that. But it is also true that like a kind of nihilism is just like mainstreamed now, and it's like the post irony, like nothing is real, nothing matters, we're all already dead anyway. It's fun to play that way. Like we were talking earlier about like the dark humor. I think there's something necessary there. I think it's very human. But when it like takes the turn from being like genuine, authentic interaction or coping with the world, and it becomes just this like aesthetic where it's like we're so cool, we don't care, we're already dead, and we're totally okay with that. It sucks, and I think we need to come up with some kind of way to combat it. So we need to have like earnest, gleeful rejoicing in the world around us. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think I'm like, all right, time to embrace millennial cringe. Like,
Mm.
by that I mean, yeah, it's like be earnest. Like tell people how you feel. Like, I don't know, the irony is, yeah, it can be fun, it can be entertaining, but yeah, there has to be some heart underneath it, I
Mm.
think, and like I'm trying to remember where I heard this. I really can't remember, but this is going to be so funny if this is literally from Chris's talk and I'm like, where did I hear this? But but no, it was just like that, like some Gen Z like don't seem to understand like the concept of selling out, right? That you
Mm.
would like be offered a way to make money, but then like maybe your values didn't align with the company's values, so you would say no. That like that talking to some of these younger people, they're just like why would you ever not take the money? Like that's how this works. That's what you do, right? And that's like really like I don't know. I feel like I've heard some people kind of talk about like scam culture. It's like the way to get wealthy now is to like find some loophole, find some like glitch, get ahead of something, like something weird. That's the only way to like become astronomically rich for most people. You can make a good living if you become a lawyer or whatever. But if you want to be like the next Elon Musk, like you gotta like there's some like trick. You have to find like a trick or a hack or something like that, right? So I wonder like for young people, who yeah are watching like at least the illusion on social media of these like people getting fabulously wealthy for doing like nothing or for doing something like terrible to other people. Like, yeah, where does selling out fit in or not fit into that? Or like, yeah, does integrity have anything to do with like how you make a living anymore? Or is that just like an old-fashioned question to even ask?
I think I probably think and believe similarly to you, but I wanna say like, well, hasn't it always been that? Like, hasn't it always been the case that it's all been a racket? And I mean, yes, but like I think we have to recognize how material conditions have changed, like how like robber barons and like the time of the Industrial Revolution, like insane wealth was so different from like today's insane wealth. And it is true, and there are people on social media who have, I don't know, like millions of followers who pay like a little bit of money monthly, and they have like ostentatious, like insane mansions, and they're very, very, very wealthy, and all they do is exploit themselves in that weird, gross way, and exploit their children in that weird, gross way, and exploit identity categories, or even radical sentiment. Like there's a lot of young people who care, and they're like hoodwinked into this thing where if you don't agree with everything I think and feel, then you're a horrible, terrible, horrible, no good, very bad person. But there's no substance. Like it is all just this kind of like performative, like, oh yeah, let's be respectful of others and let's this and that. But they've had the concept of like structural change doesn't even exist to them. Like they live in this world where like individual action is all there is, and supply side activism is the most ethical thing you could do. And how dare you use a plastic straw, or how dare you shop at Walmart, go to Whole Foods and spend $12 for a pineapple. Yeah, it sucks. A lot of young people get swept up and carried away, but they're
Yeah, totally. Like how do we like claw back like meaningful action from like yeah, consumerism, lifestyle consumerism basically, right? Like it's just there's so much more to life than that. But is there? Like if you were like growing up and COVID happened and you were stuck at home and everything happened through your phone and is there
is
more
there?
than that? Are there if these organizations are shuttering because there's no volunteers, then like is there more than online? Like if there are no public spaces anymore, there's no union halls anymore. Like it's not like young people are just like hallucinating that there's like less to do and few places to go. Like I think there are fewer places to go. There are fewer organizations, right? Like, and I think even the Ehrenreichs talk about that in their professional managerial classwork, where it's like there were these like more social, like working class pastimes that like slowly got replaced by like the television and like all of these pastimes where we stay home and don't see anyone. So Yeah, I think we have to be careful not to sort of, well, yeah, moralize about the young people as if they've
Mm.
like put themselves in this position, or they're just more selfish or antisocial or something like that. It's like, well, what would you do if you came of age in COVID, right? Like, who would you be, you know?
Yeah, it's scary. It's horrifying. It's depressing. I feel really bad. Because we had it good. And I think relatively we still have it good. Um, but yeah, like young people are just being brought up in like a Jackson Pollock painting of bullshit, and it sucks. Um, a couple days ago, I was made to feel really old. Um, that was weird. People said I'm in great shape for my age, and I was like, what
Oh
does that mean,
no.
dude? Like, what does that mean? I'm not like for my age, dude. What? No, I'm not. I'm not old enough to say for people to say that about me. Um, but it is true. Like I am, you know, I am older. I am disconnected from kids today, and we all are. And I like we have to honor that and not blame them. Get off my lawn. You know, we also have to like try to do something, embrace them, and be like, look, man, you're a kid, and the world sucks, and that sucks for you, but also like you're a fucking kid. Let me give you a hug. Let me smack you for being an idiot. Let's try to learn some things and try to build like constructive relationships instead of just putting all this pressure on them. But yeah, like the fear, like I can't even imagine being born into a world that like is pretty much already almost over. It sucks.
Yeah. Can you imagine if like every dumb thing you thought and said as a teenager was permanent and online? Like I can't even the only reason that like my generation, like everyone I went to school with has not been canceled is because
Dude.
we just said it in person and everyone forgot.
Yeah. There's a resurgence of edginess though. And I like, so like J-Reg, he's a Canadian. You know him. You're probably close personal friends with him because there's so few Canadians. But when he came on recently, he fascinates me. Like I've watched a lot of him and I've tried to understand him, and it finally clicked when he was on. I was like, oh, I get it now. You're expressing yourself. And I think before that, I thought like, oh no, you're actually like trying to do some serious political project or something, and I was like, that's kind of gross. I don't really like it, but also like there's an undeniable charm with him. And I think he represents something. Like there's a lot of young people who are just hurting and they're like experimenting. And I think it's cool. I think it's awesome that they're experimenting rather than like latching on to identity categories and saying, this is it, this is me, ultimately, this is the ontological ground truth. And if you don't validate my unique lived experience, then you're a fascist. I think it's great to experiment and play. But it also makes me self-conscious. Like, I can't help but be rough around the edges. And I get self-conscious about that because I don't want to be that way. Like I want to be presentable, and I want to look nice, and I want like to be legible and intelligible for other people. But I don't know. It's all bullshit anyway. We're all already dead.
I
So
mean, you looked great at TUCON, by the way. You scrub up real good.
thank you. I was really happy. Like I was proud of myself. I was like, yeah, dude, I'm gonna look decent. Feels good to look decent. I think
Yeah.
everybody looked decent. Um, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up here soon. But before we do, I don't know, is there anything that's like at the tip of your tongue or like the tippy top of your mind or whatever that you want to blurt out?
Yeah, I love that you kind of ended on a note of play there a minute ago, like talking about the younger generation and stuff. And I thought this piece I saw in the news was like really striking. And it was about how like kids aren't using playgrounds, right? And
Mm,
like kind of the easy answer or explanation is like, oh, the social media and the phones and blah blah blah. And I'm hesitant of ever having, yeah, like one totalizing explanation. And they did an experiment in Winnipeg, I think it was in Manitoba, that that showed that it's a bit more complicated than that. So there's a playground in Winnipeg, and what they did is they took out the boring,
mm,
safe playground made of rounded plastic where you like couldn't actually have fun on it because over time playgrounds have gotten like less and less dangerous and less fun. They put in a dangerous playground, which probably is just like a 90s, 80s
mm,
style playground, right? That we all fell off of a bunch of times. And the kids came back. They still have their phones, right?
mm,
Like it's not always the phones,
mm,
Like there's so many things at play. And I just something about that story just like gave me so much hope, right? Because it's like kids do want to play, they do want to have fun, they do want to connect, and they will. Like if we
mm.
give them the chance to and what they need to do it, they will. And I had the same thing happen. I went and saw a movie with a friend downtown, and we were walking around and we like actually stumbled upon this massive playground, like massive, like adults could play on it. And we did. We played for like an hour and like, we're kind of like creaky and crunchy, but still it was so amazing. And there were like teens, like groups of teens just like hanging out, And it's like, I don't know, there's so much always complaint about like the teens and how bad they are
Mm,
and everything. It's like where are they supposed to go? What are they supposed to do? If you build them a giant ass playground, they'll hang out, they'll swing, they'll like tease each other and like I don't know. We need if we want to like break the isolation, if we
mm,
want to get kids off their phones, we gotta like build stuff
mm.
that they can choose instead. So maybe that's where I'd end it.
I like that a lot. Yeah, if you build it, they will come. Um,
Exactly.
all right, I'm gonna hit the end button, and we'll say bye bye to YouTube. So bye bye YouTube.
Bye, YouTube.